Hey everybody, going to approach this from a drone angle, but it applies to all of our equipment, and that is to do updates. Right? If you've got an Autel or a DJI drone, I personally fly an Autel. Um, the government's going to allow them to be updated until 2029 now. I find that hilarious that the government would insert itself in there in the first place, but worried that the drones could be used by the Chinese government, yet at the same time allowing them to be updated, including full updates to the operating systems on there, which, again, if you were truly worried about them being used for spying purposes, you probably wouldn't allow this, period. So the drones can't come in, but we can update the software on the existing ones, which there's a huge fleet of, and that's okay. Again, none of this makes any sense. It's got to be the drone lobby in the United States pushing for this, especially considering the fact that you've got members of the president's family involved in drones now. I'm sure that has nothing to do with it. That said, always keep all of your gear up to date. That includes your camera. All right, you know there's firmware updates for your camera. Did you know there's firmware updates for your lenses as well? Right? Make sure you keep all that up to date. Make sure that your drone is up to date. Make sure that your controller, if your drone has a controller, is up to date. And if your controller is your cell phone, make sure that's up to date too. Your computers, I don't care if you're using a Mac or a Windows machine, make sure that all of the software is up to date. It's especially important when it comes to, in my opinion, the drones, because if there's a hackable piece in the drone software, especially in the communications between the drone and the ground, somebody could hijack your drone. And if that crashes into something, you're the one responsible for it because it's your drone, regardless of whether somebody hijacked your control or not, and try to prove that somebody hijacked your control. But it's more than just those things. It's the little glitches that could come up that could make you lose control. It's also the improvements they might make to either the range or the control or the return home. You know, when your drone loses signal from your controller, it's supposed to do something, right? I believe you can change it based on the drone. It can hover in place, but a lot of them are set to return home. So if it can't call home, it goes up to the height that it needs to be and flies back. Now, always remember to take a good look at that height. Now, mine's set to about 300 feet, I think, as a default, which is great for clearing most areas. But bear in mind, if it hits that because it's running low on battery and returns, 300 feet is a way up for it to get to and then fly back from. If your surroundings don't require it, like you're out in a field, keep it low. Don't make it go up any higher than it needs to be. If you're already flying at the height it needs to be, then that's great. Just let it come back from that height. But in order to do that, know your surroundings, right? And there's apps that will let you get estimates of heights of things. You can probably eyeball it for the most part, but take a look at the surrounding trees, telephone poles, power lines, things like that. Make sure that your drone is well above them, or if it can fly under them, such as power lines, make sure that it's going to fly below the power lines as it returns. And you always have to keep this in mind, especially when you've changed to a new area, because if something happens and that drone needs to come home, you're going to have no control over that drone, right? So if it loses control because it can't talk back to the controller, you're not going to be able to control it. If it's running low on battery, you may not be able to override it either. It's in that programmed, I need to go home now. And if you haven't set it up properly when you get there to make sure that it's going to come back home safely, then you could fly it into a tree. So make sure that it's got the right height. Make sure that the return home is smart enough to know to either bypass an obstacle or stop. If it's flying back and it hits an obstacle, it can stop. The downside to setting it up that way, of course, is if it's running low on battery and it's now hovering, it's going to drop from that height, right? It's hovering in place until the battery gives out. Or you can regain control of it in some way. If you can regain control, great. You can take it, you can bring it down nice and gently where it is, if you can get to it. If it's not, then you're going to have to make sure that you've got it in there to avoid obstacles, basically bypass and go around the obstacle. But again, it's drone season, at least here in the Northeast. It's much better drone season now than winter because of the drain that the cold makes on the batteries. But also remember that the birds are out there. They may not like your drone. And birds are really, really good at diving. They're not so fast at going up. So if you're out there flying and a bird's eyeballing your drone, which you should know because you should be keeping an eye on the drone and not using the controller as your only view of the world, then you just hit it up. Shoot that thing up into the air. The bird has to reorient it to go up. Now, if you drop it, it's much faster for the bird to hit the drone than for the drone to hit the ground, right? Because that bird can drop at a great rate and your drone is toast. So shoot it up, but don't just shoot it up and over, so that by the time the bird can reorient on it, you're already past where the bird is. And then when you bring it down, it may not be able to dive and get to it as quickly. Now, some areas have larger birds like hawks and eagles that may take exception to a drone buzzing around, especially if you happen to get close to their nest. So keep that in mind as well. I guess the moral of this whole piece here is to make sure that you survey your area before you get there. And that includes, if you can, get some satellite photographs. If you can see some satellite photographs of the area, that'll help. And if you can get some topological maps, the Geological Society, the U.S. Geological Society has topographical maps. Get a topographical map of where you are, because you might think, well, the trees are only 20 feet tall here, but if that 20-foot tall tree is on a hill that's another 50 feet above you, now you're talking 250 feet, right? So you want to make sure that you get above that. And again, you're paying attention to what's going to happen should something happen to the drone. Now, this is worst case scenario, right? Your controller loses control of the drone. It's not a flyaway if it's going to return home. If it's not going to return home, then you could have a flyaway where it could just continue going the way it was going. There was a YouTube video where a guy went out to go, he wanted to get some beautiful view of a beach. And he sent the drone out, and the drone lost communications, and the drone kept going out into the ocean. And the other thing to keep in mind when you're flying your drone, especially if it's over anything dangerous like water, and I mean dangerous to the drone. If you're flying over water, if you're flying over rocks, if you're flying over a cliff, because you want to get that beautiful view coming up the cliff and catching what's above it, keep in mind when you're bringing the drone back, if there's wind at your back, which could be much worse where it is, so keep an eye on your battery usage. If it's flying into a headwind on the way home, it needs to have more power than it did going out. And it may go out faster than you anticipate too. So bear that in mind. If the wind is to its back as you're taking it out, it could go faster and further than you anticipate when you're taking it out. But even if it has to hover, because you want that cinematic image, right? You're sitting there and you're rolling that camera up so it starts low and it comes up and it catches up to the horizon. It's still using electricity to stay motionless. And if it's fighting the wind, it's using even more electricity for that. So bear in mind you need to keep track of what the weather's like in there. I always used UAV Forecast and a couple of other tools that are out there to just get a feel for what the weather's like. I also have in my kit a wind gauge. Now, bear in mind that the wind gauge only is going to tell you what the wind is like where you are. The wind could be much worse above, or it could be much less above. But it gives you a starting point, a baseline of what things are like where you are. And if you've got a slight breeze and you bring the drone up off the ground, right, just let it hover for a minute or two to see what the drain on the battery looks like. All right, if you're not familiar with what your drone looks like in a breeze and how it's fighting a breeze, leave it at ground level. Bring it up a little bit so it's at your eye level there, and you can see what the characteristics are of your drone when it's in a breeze. And you'll know what it is based off of having a gauge or something with you, and then bring it up higher. And then see what you're getting up there at the top. Now, if you want to know how to do it by sight, the weather.gov, the U.S. Weather Service, has a PDF file that allows you to come up with an approximation of wind speed based off of the characteristics of what you're seeing around you, such as little branches blowing around or leaves blowing around up to, of course, the trees starting to bend. If you're seeing trees bending, you better not have your drone up in the air, because most of them are not going to be able to handle it. And anyone that can is probably not going to survive very long in those kinds of winds with the amount of battery drain that's going to be in place. So just like you need to keep your eye out for people around you, keeping your eye on the drone, keeping an eye out for the wind, keeping an eye out for the birds. So sometimes it's really good idea, especially if you're in a new area, if you've got somebody to help you, right? That you're not doing it alone. You just got somebody who's spotting you. They don't have to be a pilot. They just have to help you keep an eye on the drone. They can say, hey, there's a bird coming in. They can say, hey, the wind seems to be picking up. They can tell you that you're over an area, or somebody just drove in underneath you or something. They can take a look at the surrounding area and let you know what the surrounding area is like while you're concentrating on the mission that you're flying. And that's the downside when you're a drone pilot, is you're concentrating on the drone. You're splitting your attention a little bit because you've got to check the screen if you're doing videography to make sure that you've got everything in focus and that you're getting the movements that you want. And that doesn't leave a lot of time for you to keep an eye on your surroundings. The wind could have come up and you not noticed it, or the birds may have come in. There may be a flock of birds that's about to come into your area. Any of those things, it's great to have a observer just along, just to keep an eye out for you. But that's what I got for you guys this week, and I will talk to you all next week.